Hi, good to see you,
there.
Claire. Looking forward to a nice little chat about your new exciting book, which is just about to be launched, called Ritual Theatre. I'm just wondering, to kick off, tell me a little bit about yourself and your background. Obviously, you're a writer, hence the book. Your background's in theatre.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and the work that you do in a nutshell.
Well, I started out as the most unlikely theatre person.
Right.
I was a shy introvert clinging to the sidelines. So theatre became a way for me to come out of my shell, and from then on I was pretty addicted to it.
Really? So this is when you were very young, you were very shy, what, personally at home and so on?
Yeah, no, right up into my 20s.
Up into your 20s.
Yes.
And so how did you know, for somebody who's quite shy, thinking then theatre would be the last place they'd probably want to be exposed on the stage, or something where you just got to do it once and that's it. So how did that life in theatre come about?
Well, it's a long story.
Yeah.
I think it was just it was a total fluke. I ended up in hospital because I was very unhappy at the time, and the doctor had given me some tablets that were for people with gallbladder problems. But actually, the fact was I was very unhappy.
Right.
And I ended up in hospital, and there was a nurse there who was at drama school, and she ignited me into theatre, and I just got fascinated by it. And so I didn't even think about, no, this isn't something you should be doing. And I also did it in a very safe kind of way. I was at I did it at university, and you didn't have to be the most fantastic actor or anything like that. And so it emerged very, very gradually.
And then how did it unfold? So were you, presumably was your life, were you working plays? Tell us a little bit about what you did as an actress, and then the move, presumably, to the work that you do now.
Yeah, well, I was involved in a play at the Edinburgh Festival, and it was a kind of, it was a very cathartic play, and actually I was right on the edge of a nervous breakdown, and I practically had a nervous breakdown after it, because it brought sort of stuff out of me. And whilst I was kind of in that breakdown place, I started writing, and this sort of mythical stuff started coming out, and I started writing from the unconscious. So I started writing as a playwright. And then much later on, I started getting more interested in the healing aspects of theatre. In fact, I was always interested in the healing. That was what drew me into theatre, was the fact that I had a lot of healing to do. And I found that, through delving into my emotions, through expressing myself, because I had a lot of stuff that I couldn't express to my family, much as I loved them. Lots of stuff that was kind of like, I couldn't bring myself to kind of get it out. Well, and I think a lot of people feel like that.
Lots of people feel like that, and I guess what's really fascinating about that there is that when lots of people go to theatre, they go to the theatre because they want their emotions raised, or their spirits raised, and so on. So it's interesting there, you as somebody who's acting, and I'm finding that you're wanting to go on that kind of healing kind of journey. And I guess from what I know about your work, a lot of the work that you do now is using theatre, using drama and so on to help people to connect, to heal as a tool. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do now, and then let's talk a little bit about the book.
Right. Well, I wanted actually just to go back to something that you said about when people go to the theatre, because what is interesting about ritual theatre, in ancient theatre, people were not just passive viewers going to kind of like feel better. They were a part of something that they knew was healing and transformational.
And you told me something about, there was a word, we had a chat over the phone, and you told me something about the essence of, I don't know if it's the essence of a word or part of the essence of ancient theatre. You were telling me a little bit about something about how the theatre and the healing was literally another kind of direct link.
Was that when I was talking about Escapolis?
Yeah, tell me about that and that word.
Yeah, well, I only learnt this since this book was published. It was through, and forgive me, I mean, I want her to forgive me for her name, because she's got a very difficult name, Tanya Batsaglu or something.
Yeah.
And she did a lot of research. She's Greek herself. And during her research, she uncovered the fact that there were two forms of medicine in ancient Greece. There was Hippocrates, and we've inherited Hippocrates, which is more about substances and science, you know, as we know it.
Yeah, the pills and the potions to help us.
And then there was Asclepius, who was a god, but also a great physician. And his tradition was much more like the sort of alternative complementary medicine tradition. And he had sanctuaries all over Greece, and he sent people to the theatre for their treatment. So the Greeks really, I mean, this is why their theatre is so cathartic. They understood that emotions need to be expressed.
They need to be expressed, and that they can be healing if they're expressed.
And whether or not you're in the audience witnessing that, or you're an actor doing that, expressing, or you know, and then what happened was that when people came along to the plays, they would then go and sleep in a dormitory underneath the theatre, and they would have healing dreams.
Wow. So people would go to the theatre because they knew about the connection between the expression, the self-expression, and also the healing. And so people would go to the theatre and then...
I have no idea.
Yeah.
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know because we don't know enough about it, but it seems likely.
It seemed that way.
Yeah.
And so people would say they have these healing dreams, extraordinary at the theatre.
And this is 3,000, 4,000 years before Freud and Jung and
it's fascinating. And isn't it fascinating? Because there's something, it would seem, that theatre performance is something that is still very, very much in our psyche. Often, in a way, socially or what have you, we go to the movies or we might go to the theatre and so on. So it's very interesting. And most people seem to like theatre or music or film on all sorts of levels. And I guess that there's no surprise. There's something special about that. So will you tell us a little bit about the work that it is that you do now? So there you were, you made the transition from somebody who, actress, then found yourself writing plays, you found yourself writing. And then tell us a little bit about then how your career unfolded, and then this interest in the healing, and when you took that.
Well, I trained as a drama therapist, and whilst I was doing that, I thought, oh my God, this is so powerful. This isn't just for people that, yes, it is for people going through strong crises in their lives. We're all going through that. But this is for everybody. We all need this all the time. We need a vehicle to express ourselves. So I got very interested in bringing what I had learned much more into the public arena. And I also, what was beautiful about it was that it was fun and expressive and aesthetic. And there's something, Sue Jennings actually, who's the founder of drama therapy, talks about this aesthetic experience that people have. So when we're expressing, we work in drama therapy, we work with stories. In ritual theatre, it's about working with myths and stories and archetypal stories, stories that have been told for thousands of years. That's what I feel makes it.
And the ritual bit. Tell me about the ritual. Where does the word ritual in this relate to? What does that relate to? Well, lots of us will be familiar with storytelling and the power of stories and so on. The ritual bit. Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah. Well, dramatic rituals have been practiced since earliest times, and I'll also add about the healing dreams. Of course, primitive people have known about healing dreams. Shamans knew about healing dreams. So rituals have been created naturally from the earliest times. That's why ritual theatre, of course it wasn't called that then, but it was a form of ritual theatre.
Great, so when you say the ritual, would it be taking people through a particular kind of process that they knew would have a particular kind of connection? Is that where the ritual bit comes from? Yeah.
Well, a ritual essentially is a kind of journey. And a ritual is different from a ceremony. A ceremony, has bits to it as a ritual does. But a ritual often is very spontaneous and intuitive, and is often led by a healer, a shaman. So a ritual will be conducted. There will be a ritual master who's conducting the ceremony. And it often has a purpose, to bring about healing, or to bring about transformation, or, like an earliest man didn't understand why the sun did certain things and why things happened, and so he was confused, and so he wanted to find a way of communicating with the gods. So they created these dramatic enactments, which eventually became ritual theatre. And so the Greeks then took those rituals, their Dionysian, I can never say it, rituals. It's their early theatre started off with Dionysian rituals. Dionysian. Oh yes, I'm not saying it right.
So it sounds so it's rich, as though there's all sorts of layers here, isn't it, between what we're consciously aware of and what we're unconsciously aware of. There seems to be this journey between human beings wanting to understand themselves, needing to heal for whatever particular kind of reason. The power of theatre in that, I guess, expression, the human story, and then understanding oneself and the healing that can go through that. Then you talked a little bit about your training in terms of dramatic theatre, and then you said something very interesting, which I want to kind of touch on again. You said, well, you wanted to take that learning into public spaces. What kind of places do you mean? Because I know that some people who do dramatic work, very often they might go into big organisations and help people to be able to present themselves and all this kind of stuff. It sounds as though you're doing something far broader than that. You're interested in drama in all sorts of different settings. Tell me, what was that fascination, and what kind of settings is that you're passionate about using drama in?
Well, I work mainly with people who want to heal themselves, or they want to bring out their potential, or they want to break out of places where they're stuck.
So give me some scenarios.
Yeah, so, I work a lot with people who are a bit like me, who were stuck, inhibited.
This might be members of the public or professionals?
Yes, I mean, a lot of people now are coming and, from very kind of like coming from corporate backgrounds, because they know actually right now, they know that if they want to stay in their jobs, they've got to perform at a high level. So I'm getting a lot of people coming because of that. But I also feel, I mean, my mission, this hasn't happened yet, but this is what I would like to see. I feel, and particularly as the National Health is really cutting down on the arts therapies, because there's been a sort of very strong move towards cognitive behavioural therapy, and it's very difficult to explain what happens in a drama therapy session or an art therapy session. Precisely what you said earlier about the conscious and the unconscious, about the way in which drama meets those two needs. The unconscious level is being worked on, and the conscious level is worked on.
And is it powerful because how one perceives themselves to be and how they perceive themselves to be limited? When you bring in drama, just simply freeze that up for a while, and then all sorts of magic can happen. I'm keen to know why is it that drama is so powerful, and why it is that people are drawn to drama therapy, and presumably including all sorts of people who know very little about it. Why is it so powerful? Is it because it is just liberating, because it takes somebody into a completely different space? I certainly, my background was a singer and kind of performer. Part of it was, and one of the things that's lovely about different songs is that you can lose yourself in different emotion. One minute you're singing something that's upbeat, the next minute it's something that's really tragic, and so on. It's lovely sometimes just to express those different kind of emotions and to play with that. Why? So tell me a little bit about why is this stuff kind of so powerful and so profound?
Why is it so profound? Well, it works on many levels. First of all, we talked about the conscious level. So that is the enactment of a story. It's powerful because unlike when you're doing theatre and you're doing it because you want to do theatre, or when you come into sort of a healing drama session, and I'm not sure that everybody wants to do drama. I think most people are terrified of doing drama. But they know, or they feel somehow that it will stretch them. And so on that conscious level, their mind gets taken up with the characters and the stories in the drama, unlike their own drama, which is painful and unpleasant.
So tell me a little bit about, so when somebody's coming into a healing drama session like you might run, walk us through what you might typically do. Would you be giving them perhaps a scenario that is separate from their scenario to engage them consciously whilst other work goes on? And just tell us a little bit about that, because it sounds fascinating.
Well, I use a story that I sense, again, I use my intuition, would be right for that particular group of people, and I've already got a feel for them before they come.
See. So if I'm either an individual or a group, I would have shared with you some of the issues that it is. Either I'm not performing well at work, I want to be more confident at work, or we're seeming to have the group of us are having some stress problems around this and that. So they will have given you a brief. And then what you'll be looking for the kind of stories that you think may well be helping them consciously and subconsciously with the themes that are being expressed and the themes that they might need to look at. Is that essentially?
Yes. I mean, to be honest, I never know, because there's so much in the story, and that is exactly why it's powerful. So the story has a kind of theme, and I know it's going to meet some need.
So how do you pick the story then? I'm curious.
Well, I kind of like, for instance, I mean, I'm doing some work around finding your voice. So I pick stories that are sort of around, there's some way in which there's a breakthrough or there's something. So I choose, it doesn't have to be the perfect story. In fact, it's probably better that it's not the perfect story. But there's a theme there, and then they get, as I said before, they get sort of like, they're just given this story and this task to do, and by this time they're having fun, because I have given them I've got a few tools about how to do it and how to make it really effortless and how to tune in with themselves to get out of their heads, which is very, very important, because in our culture we are so head-driven. So it gets them feeling that they can be spontaneous, feeling, that they can express themselves, but, there's dressing up materials, and they can sort of return to that sort of innocent place. And
so suddenly there's been a lot of freedom, a lot of expression, not perhaps finding that they can do something they hadn't done before. So they're being, as you said, consciously occupied with that task. Tell us a little bit about what's then going on unconsciously. Is it that presumably is one of the things that they suddenly find that they've been in a way liberated, they've been expressing all sorts of stuff, they find themselves lighter. I'm wondering, do they often feel that there's a difference but not quite be able to put their finger on what the difference is that's happened to them? I'm curious to know what...
Yeah, it is fascinating. Now, what happens first of all is... when they're looking at this story or this bit of the story, usually it's a sort of small part of the story, I invite them, what are the characters that you're drawn to? Or are there emotions in the story that you're drawn to? And so this is where the unconscious comes in, because the unconscious is saying, help, I need, get out, I need some expression. And so that bit inside them goes, oh, I feel attracted to that. Or I say sometimes, if you don't relate to anything in the story, is there anything that you really dislike about this story? I say, go for that, because it can work both ways. That could be something to do with a fear or a blockage, or, they never know. But they get sort of kind of engaged. And... so, of course, there's this unconscious level, which is also, we'll say, when it starts getting played out, there's a spiritual level that's often happening. And the way that people work together, I teach them, because I'm teaching them to work in a very intuitive way, there's all sorts of things. There's emotions being expressed, there's dreams being expressed, there's wishes being expressed. And something like one of the things that we've I think I say in the book, and many people say, is that when there's witnesses, so there'll be usually 2 or 3 groups, and the other groups will be witnessing. And they play, this is the most important part of it, is being witnessed. And so the other groups are reflecting back what they're experiencing.
So does that mean that when there's a group or individuals who are coming through this particular session, does that mean that there's a number of different kind of groups, that people who you've brought together in order that there's also another dimension to it, another reflection, or is it?
Well, there's usually a variety of different people who come in for different reasons.
Right, yeah. So they might,
but
be
it doesn't
different.
matter.
So could we?
Oh yes.
So it could be all sorts of different people.
Completely.
Wow, that's quite strong. Yes.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't
so different
matter
people in different walks of life, or it might well just be one whole team of people.
Oh yeah. It doesn't matter.
And so the witnessing is just others either in that group or who've been
yes, it's all
part.
Generally it's all within the group, because that's what creates a safe space.
Yeah.
And when we take it into a performing situation, then that's very different. I mean, that takes a little bit more preparation. I've done that kind of work too. So what happens is that I call them empathic witnesses, because I want to take away from the idea of audience, because audience are often seen as they're often seen as the enemy or threatening or etc. But I want to create a very safe environment, so I call them empathic witnesses, and that they're there to really support and assist the people that are performing. I call it exploring, and it's much more like what actors do when they're in rehearsing, where it's all about discovering and
so they're getting that feedback. They're getting an empathetic feedback and a recognition of who they are and what's being seen. It just sounds fascinating. I mean, one thing I'm keen for us to get onto before we close is tell me a little bit about then the book. Presumably, there's tell us what the book covers. It covers a lot of the background, the history of this kind of stuff, and how it can be applied. Tell us a little bit about it.
It's very rich. I mean, I have written about
the power of dramatic ritual in personal development in groups and clinical practice.
Yes. So there's about 12 or 30. I think there's 12 people that have written this book. And all who have explored different areas. So the first part of the book is all about the roots of ritual theatre, and it's about the anthropological basis of ritual theatre. And there's, I mean, it's full. I don't want to describe it. And then the second part of it is about ritual theatre used in personal development groups, very much what I've been describing, the sort of work that I do, and also includes work by a chapter about Paul Rebillo's work, who was an American Gestalt therapist who brought theatre in, and one of the writers, Steve Mitchell, wrote about that. And then the third part is all about using ritual theatre in clinical practice. So
who is this? So it sounds as though there's quite a bit of a broad audience for this book. What is it you're wanting to do with this book, and who is it you're wanting to bring this book to the attention of? Is it people who traditionally may not have looked at drama and theatre and seeing how it could be used and applied there? That, for example, the clinical practice, I wonder what in some health environments where it could be useful for people who are perhaps recovering. Tell us a little bit about
Yes, I mean, well, it does talk about using ritual theatre with epilepsy, with schizophrenia, with minority groups. So there's a lot about that there. And there's also, I forgot to mention, there's a chapter about how a ritual theatre as performance, where performances were taken all over the world. And in fact, the reason why I think this book had to be written now is because ritual theatre is becoming more and more popular. More and more theatre groups are calling themselves ritual theatre. And more theatre groups are also interested in the healing aspects of theatre, or they're interested in kind of like tribal rituals, and they're interested in bringing more of that into
that's
theatre.
Interesting, isn't it? The era that we're in now, do you think it's partly because of the era that we're in now, whereby I guess for a long period of time, it's quite interesting when the economies and so on seem to be booming and so on, lots of things is just entertainment, fun and what have you. Sometimes when things are in regression, or sometimes even worse, and in kind of depression, that I guess people really, and we've known that, isn't it, are often drawn to theatre or whatever, or cinema or whatever, to escape. And so this healing aspect, is it that you think that lots of people are finding that they are hurting, and so therefore they're wanting, that there's a call for this, and that those people who are in the theatrical world are really recognising that it becomes more profound, that fundamental base of the connection between connecting, presenting and healing.
Yes.
Do you think that that's part of why all this stuff is bubbling up?
I mean, I would say that it's the ritual theatre that's emerging is very much a minority. It's very, very small. However, I think that it's going to grow. And I would like to see it coming much more back into theatre. So to go back to your earlier question, is that who's this for? I hope it's for people that are intrigued about ritual theatre. I hope it's also for counsellors, therapists, and people that are in the helping professions that are intrigued by this and want to bring this much more maybe into their own work, or to see how it could be healing. I also think I would love to see this taken up by the theatre. I mean, this is just a beginning book. This subject is so rich. I mean, we've just scratched the surface.
I see what you're saying. So it sounds as though there's a real richness here. But I mean, just picking up on what you were saying before, I know that in the work that I do as a coach and so on, and part of my background, as I said, is in media and part of my background is singing. I know that sometimes I would get people to, in a way, I guess, enact certain, I say enact, sometimes we will role play certain particular scenarios. It might be a meeting, it might be this, it might be that, and it's quite extraordinary whenever you're getting anybody, or often we will work with people in businesses, to become their actual customer. Yes. One of the things that I find really extraordinary, when you get anybody to stop being themselves, pause that and to inhabit someone else, it becomes very powerful and very profound, and instantly they get an insight that they didn't have or didn't seem to have before, that they've accessed that. And it's very powerful, it's very, very profound. So it does seem that the amount of richness in this, and I certainly know for myself from that performance side, that there's something very powerful that one gets from being able to explore that. So it sounds like you're saying, actually there's so much for us all to begin to explore in terms of how is it that we can use this richness of drama to understand, to fundamentally heal. It sounds as though that healing bit is very much which it sounds as though it started out as what you're passionate about, to bring the drama, that really derive the healing and bring that healing to the fore when people are playing with this stuff.
Well, the thing is that when they start playing another character, it liberates them from themselves. Yeah. And as you say quite rightly, it puts them into another person's shoes. And actually, I've done this in business with marketing people, and they have found it incredibly powerful. And it liberates them. Yeah. It gets them to think from a different point of view. Sue Jennings actually talks a lot about this about drama and conscience. And about when you get somebody to play, for instance, a victim of a crime, you get a criminal to play a victim of a crime, suddenly they begin,
the empathy, and it's interesting you talked about that empathetic witness, so these different perspectives and that empathy. So all sorts of stuff, it seems, kind of emerge. We're running out of time. I could carry on talking to you all day. For people who are curious to find out a little bit about you, tell me where people could find you, the website. Is there a web address?
Yes. My website is very simply makingmoves.net.
Makingmoves.net. So people can find out a bit about you, more about ritual theatre, how to order sessions or whatever, everything like that, if they're curious too. And I wanted to talk about, if there's a little bit of time, and the camera might just run out, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, we've talked a little about healing, and healing from the perspective of all sorts of different audiences, and I wanted to touch on something maybe at the beginning of your journey, or a bit of the journey, where you as a performer in that healing. One of the things that does interest me, and it's one of the reasons why I began a lot of the work that I began, was that I'd met lots of singers, performers and so on, who really struggled and needed to go on their own healing kind of journey. Do you feel as though, I just wonder if you've got any general thoughts on that, because it strikes me, and I think we touched on this briefly in a short chat that we had, it strikes me that there are those performers who are very, very aware or mindful of some of this stuff, and the power and the potency of and the healing side of drama, and other people who see it pretty much as a job.
Yes.
and perhaps don't understand
Yes.
it as deeply. Do you have any
Yes.
general thoughts on that, and any thoughts on how it is that those
Yes.
creatives themselves can heal as you've been on that healing journey?
Well, I think there are a few extraordinary performers. I cite Mark Rylance as one of those performers.
I don't know, Mark. Yeah.
Oh, he's extraordinary. He is a shamanic performer,
Mm-hmm.
and so many people, many actors now, are finding that pathway into. And I think it's, I think this is beginning to become more part of. I hope it's going to become more part of training, and also another important part of that is helping actors to deal with all the emotions that they're constantly regurgitating.
And this is fascinating because you touched on this, I think, in a chat we were just having over the phone. It's something I hadn't really thought about. That, I guess that how somebody deals with those particular emotions. And I think I shared with you, part of my background in the past. I'd been a Samaritan volunteer, co-director of the Samaritans in central London and so on, and you have a lot of training to be able to deal with lots of kind of emotional stuff. And so in the work that I do now, fortunately, I'm very lucky that I'm mindful about all sorts of emotional stuff that people could be going through in their head. But I never really thought much about it from that perspective of actors who are often dealing with very, very, very powerful stuff here. And are you saying that some of them may not necessarily get that support, how to deal with and how to manage that stuff once they've let it out of the box?
They don't get any support because it's a job. It's their job to produce that. And actually there's a very, very simple exercise that they can do at the end of every piece of work they do, or every time they go on stage or whatever it is, just to kind of come back to themselves. And actually there's a big concern amongst, I've been talking to acting coaches in America who are concerned about the burnout level and in actors, and actors whose careers have to come to an end because they simply cannot handle it.
Right.
Actors that have had breakdowns. I mean, I nearly had a breakdown because I was way out of what was safe for me as an actor to engage with emotionally. Vivian Lee had a breakdown. You can see that in Streetcar Named Desire. So it's a very vulnerable thing to be doing.
So
so I think it's important for the acting profession to be aware of this.
So there's a role there within the acting community in terms of the power of the healing and connection and being aware and being able to take care of one's own emotions and support oneself and support others.
Yeah, and also maybe if ritual theatre came back much more into theatre, it's about healing the actor as well. It's about, that's what happens in my groups, the theatre, that people with no experience whatsoever, the quality of the expression, not the first time they do it, but people that come back again and again get extremely good at it.
Well, this is one thing that I
it's
find fascinating.
Very
Well, it sounds fascinating, and I just think, well, maybe there's another conversation for us to have on this, because I do think it's very powerful. I've often wondered, and one of the things that drew me into the work as a coach working with singers and performers after being a singer was, what would happen if, like an athlete, a singer was connected mind, body and spirit. That's what fascinated me and my best friend when we first began lots of work that we did, so becoming really interested in, well, what happens when somebody is at peace with themselves and connected, understands the human experience, and then does their job? How powerful potentially is it there that they can deal with those emotions, play with them, enjoy them, connect with others to them, but without them not getting the burnout and that perhaps deeper learning and deeper understanding of the human condition that's available. So this journey that you're inviting for us to explore is absolutely fascinating. So tell us, just before we close then, so your hopes with this work, it's understood there's all sorts of different work you'll be doing from people from business, from individuals and so on, in terms of helping them with their emotional stuff through this drama and ritual therapy kind of work. Tell us, what are your hopes, what are the things that you're wanting to do from here on in? It sounds like there's all sorts of things you're excited about. I know you've got this launch coming up quite soon, but what are the things that you're wanting to do in a nutshell from here on in with your work?
Yeah, well, so many things. One of the things that I would like to see happening is, I don't know if we would call it ritual theatre, but I would like to see this kind of work available to everybody. I would like people who, I would like it happening all over the country. I would like somebody that's coming out of their job feeling stressed, feeling they can't handle what's going on, to feel that they can go somewhere, to community hall, to village hall somewhere, and know that they can work that through in this very fun and safe way.
Well, isn't that beautiful what you're saying? Because isn't it interesting when you, earlier on in the talk, where you start to talk about that discovery about ancient Greece, and I guess all sorts of theatres and all sorts of places where people go for healing. It's nice to have at least an alternative place for people to go. I mean, I know there are all sorts of different things, but a different kind of space and an additional space for that.
You know, maybe even doctors would start, you know, sending their depressed patients along there. You know, I think depression would change if people had an outlet on. And the beauty about ritual theatre is it really is for everyone. You know, it doesn't need to be with a big audience. It could be with an audience, as I say, of just a few people, just the people that have come into that gathering that are there to be supportive. You know, so I would like to see it as something that is for everybody. And it's not just for the people who, you know, feel comfortable performing. You know, everyone can participate in some way and be part of it.
Wonderful. Well, that sounds really wonderful. Claire, again, the website address if people are curious to find out a bit more about you or the book or more about ritual theatre.
Yes, so, www.makingmoves.net.
Wonderful. I'm going to leave you there to smile whilst I turn off the camera.
Okay.
And thank you so much. What a joy it's been to see you this afternoon. Thank you so much, and good luck with the book and the work.
Fantastic.